Vegetable seeds in emergencies, another kind of Groundhog Day-esque intervention. We see vegetable seeds everywhere. But there are a lot of good reasons for that as well. This is a picture of an IDP camp in Darfur. You can see it's a very small footprint. When people are living in displaced situations, you may not be able to access your field. So that's one good reason. You can have a vegetable crop fairly quickly compared to planting a field crop. Right? So you know how quickly your lettuce comes in compared to watching your corn grow over the course of the season. There are a lot of really contextual things about vegetable programming that make it a good choice. And I have here diverse beneficiaries, and I'm reminded of going to northern Uganda in, I think it was 2004. People were displaced. They had been displaced for a very long time. So in camps you had young men with very little to do. You had women who couldn't access their fields alone or in groups because they were afraid of being attacked. You had kids who had been displaced for so long that they had parents who were farmers, but they really didn't know how to farm anymore. And so a lot of our implementing partners started to look at market gardening, vegetable gardening activities. A really popular model was using the food for peace food stacks for a garden in a bag. Those are really cool. They just look like big planters. You can move them around. They're pretty heavy, but you can move them around. You can keep them close to your house, so there's no threat of going to harvest it and getting attacked. Interesting for kids, gives people access to micronutrients and other kinds of vegetables that they may not otherwise be getting. And you can really hit a wide diversity of beneficiaries. And you have a potentially longer growing season, right? If you have access to water, and usually there's plentiful sunlight, you can grow multiple times and plant multiple times. So, we love vegetable seeds, but it's not without its our overarching goals, we should have overarching goals, because in many of these locations where we have acute responses, it's, as I mentioned before, not a one-off intervention, right? I mean, I think we were in the IDP camps in northern Uganda for a number of years. Ethiopia is another one. Any place where people are displaced, it tends to not resolve very quickly. We should be thinking long-term, even with a short-term intervention. So framing this as overarching goals, of course we want to improve food security. There are other things that we can do based on crop choice and based on targeting to whatever population we're working with. I don't think they're talking about seed over there, but they left. We want to look at improving resilience to shocks, right? We talked about the fact that there may be an acute event of some conflict, but underlying that are chronic issues related to food insecurity, related to seed insecurity, and poor nutrition as well. So how do we try and target those through the use of vegetable seed interventions? And we also want to improve nutrition and livelihoods opportunities. So one of the big challenges is really designing a project that will hopefully get you to the goals that you state in the beginning. I see a lot of proposals saying we're going to give out vegetable seed and nutrition will be improved. Well, I have a 5-year-old, and I can tell you, she loves pulling all the garden carrots out, and then she likes to throw them right in the compost bin. So just growing them does not mean that consumption will happen. Our colleague mentioned earlier that there are all those other activities and components that have to go hand in hand. So training, even a short-term program, we're asking people to change their behavior, change their consumption patterns. I mean, it's a challenge for us. And we have an access to large supermarkets full of a diverse array of foods. So for people who are in situations where they may not have the nutritional information, the background, there's a large lift in terms of training. Keeping the message simple is great. This guy's shirt says, grow and eat vegetables every day. It will bring you good health. Period. Done. Eat it. And this is a copy of a chart that's found in our, they're in the back of the room, and I encourage you to take them when you leave if you would like them. There's 2 practice briefs on vegetable seed interventions. We realized over time after the original set of briefs were produced that we hadn't really dug down into vegetable seeds. Yep. This one, which is when and how to respond with vegetable seed programming. So it's really helpful if you're designing a program. And this one is vegetable seed supply and selection in humanitarian response. So please check these out. I'm going to leave them right here. They're all available electronically as well. This chart reminds me a lot of some of the things we mapped out earlier. We have different objectives, right? We're looking at far left vegetable programs can increase agrobiodiversity. So by having a wide array of vegetables, you know, the goat comes and he really likes your arugula, maybe you still have your tomatoes and your carrots left. You have greater agrobiodiversity. You're spreading risk that market demand will be absent. All of these things, and I'm not going to go through them all, but all of these point to the need for a really good assessment before you design a vegetable seed intervention. We saw so many cases where I'll be out in the field and there's this project and people are growing beautiful, I don't know, purple cabbage. Well, it happens to be in an area where no one traditionally eats purple cabbage. But they have a great booming market. This is all the NGO staff that are in the town dealing with the emergency response, which is great, right? For that amount of time, there's income generation. But long term, there's not a sustained market. So thinking about consumption patterns, thinking about training on, you know, health and nutrition, and also not just doing a seed assessment, but looking at a market assessment. What is the local market? A great example, I think, is in my next picture. No. I was talking to a group of women in South Sudan, and I said, well, are you eating this? Are you selling it? What was the point of the project? And they said, well, we're supposed to eat it, but nobody likes it. Okay, that's fine. I mean, you know, there are things people don't like. And they said, well, we take it to the market the first day, and we try and sell it. But everyone got the same seeds, and everyone's harvest is ripe at the same time. So they all go and sit at this teeny tiny little market. And so what happens the second day? Well, a couple of us might sell it, and by the third day after we take it back, I mean, walking along a dusty road in the heat with this poor little wilted vegetable, then we'll take it home and eat it. So you really have to look at what the objectives are and if you're achieving them.
Julie, just want to add to that.
Yeah.
I think what that means is that you can design a vegetable seed intervention for nutrition, but no matter what proposal you design should also be for income and marketing. Don't ever, a donor or a program advisor, don't accept a vegetable seed for nutrition only, ever.
Right.
Always have the marketing and income there.
Right. Well, because the reality is that farmers have economic demands, right? And they need to meet them, and usually that's through production. So I think putting a more realistic kind of lens on what we expect out of our programming gets us further. So there are a lot of challenges. I love this picture. This was in DRC, a vegetable production activity. One of the challenges I already mentioned are matching our objectives to our activities. How do we actually get there? If it's a nutrition objective, what kinds of activities are we going to do? And there are a lot of ideas about what's appropriate. Is it training? Is it a cooking demonstration? But what we found through, we just did a contract to look at what kind of data and information really exists on the efficacy of these programs for increasing nutrition. And what we found, I think, pretty much is that there's a real lack of hard details and hard data studying these kinds of things.
So we went through all the databases of OFDA, of the World Vegetable Center, just as vegetables, right? You know them, they're one of the CG centers that used to be called AVRDC, of Seed Programs International, which just does vegetable seeds, and CRS. The 4 groups who do scores of vegetable seed projects. Across the board, we found 30 with any documentation. So maybe out of 400, we found 30. So we're surprised. Yeah.
And to be fair, some of those were because they were procurement sensitive, so you can't share to the whole world. But even in terms of published there was very little actually looking at it. And I think part of that is because often we're not sure what sector these programs should go into. If it's a nutrition objective, do we use nutrition indicators or do we use agriculture indicators? And quite often for us and our partners, if they're giving out seeds, they look at ag intervention indicators. So you have someone saying how many beneficiaries were reached, how much was planted, blah, 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 fine, but that doesn't tell you what people are actually eating.
I think David has a question.
But isn't part of the problem in what we're looking for within nutrition? Because we're wanting to measure reductions in stunting, and and we're not wanting to measure improvements in micronutrient accessibility. And so we don't really have indicators that are that are demanded from the donor.
Right.
And we as NGOs are not going to go and put in indicators for something that the donor isn't interested in because it costs money to do.
Yes. And I think one of the other challenges is that quite often these are short-term projects, right? So it's a 12-month project, so looking at changing and stunting over 12 months. But I think, again, changing that mindset and realizing this is 5 12-month projects in a year, right? So we have this beneficiary population that we've supported over 5 years, and we really could have been looking all along. But again,
no, I think you've got a very good point. I think it's very good for good learning for us of going that extra step of putting in these indicators that will show the difference.
I would think that a couple of easy indicators to insert would be that the household dietary diversity scale to look at access,
right,
and then the women's dietary diversity scale, and both of those are USAID indicators, if most of you are USAID. Anyway, they're accepted by your donors and usually required.
right.
They'd be quite complementary to these ag programs.
Yeah, agreed. Indicators is a whole other day long. I'm not going to go there. I don't know that anyone is particularly enamored with the indicators that we currently have or use, but that wasn't a personal decision.
Yeah, but we are trying now with the study, which should come out in a month, is to put in some transparent indicators for vegetable seed intervention, including what you're saying. And we should just circulate among the group. Once we get this out, we'll just tell you where we are, and then we can all improve it together.
One other quick story about this photo. So we went out to the field. They were so excited. Things were growing. We said, how's the market? They said, not so good. And when we left, the entire vehicle that we were in was full of these cabbages, which was a lovely gesture, but it also showed to us that maybe we should have looked at a greater diversity of crops so that they didn't have 75 cabbages lying around to fill the truck. This is from an activity I visited in southern Sudan, South Sudan. It was a market garden activity, group of women, and a couple of lessons learned that I think are illustrated by this group. One is that diversification. Again, if your idea of diversifying is by giving everyone in the community the same new vegetable seed, you're not really diversifying, right? Letting farmers drive that diversification. So they know what local market demand is. They know what local preference is. So it's an issue of making long-term linkages of sources of seeds to those farmers and supporting them along the way for sale, whether it be business training, all that kind of stuff. The power of simple messages, I think, is key. And I'm certainly not a nutrition trainer, but I think, saying carrots are good for your eyes could be more compelling than saying the micronutrient ratio, blah, 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 and that's something that I think the women in this group were really grasping onto, too. The simple messages were hitting home and being carried forward. Free vegetable seed is not sustainable. I said, how is your garden going? They said, it's good, but not for long because we don't have any more seed after this. I said, are you a new group? No. We were Farm Africa, and then FAO picked us up, and then an NGO picked us up. And I said, and so where do you get your seed now? Well, we're
waiting for it.
We're not sure who's coming next. And I mean, part of that is on us as well, because we always say, why not work with existing groups, right? why start a new group? You already have a group that's already formed and they like to work together. But we're not really digging into the basic functionality of those groups. Are they self-sustaining? Do they have access to seed of the kind of seed that they want?
The other piece on this, I'll give you an example from what we've been working on in Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
We put in place some keyhole gardens to improve
Yep.
nutritional diversity.
Yep.
And there were vegetables that were made of vegetable seed that was made available.
Right.
But the women took this on and grew their own local herbs, which they then used for their own nutrition improvement, and then they sold the surpluses, for which there was a ready market within the community.
Yep.
And they stopped growing the carrots and the tomatoes and the eggplants and the other things.
Right.
But they used these, and we put in about 60 of these keyhole gardens for people to see, and the women produced 10,000 of them.
Right.
And they were using them, and
That's fantastic.
We're going to follow you up.
Yes.
okay, well,
Well, and I think there are a lot of cases like this where, I mean, I saw this in South Sudan. You saw something somewhere else. And I think, not to toot the horn of the website, but that is a platform where all of these kind of lessons learned and pilot activities can be shared so that we all don't keep reinventing the wheel.
Can I ask a very, very basic question?
Don't ask me what is planted there, because
No. It's more basic than that. So with these types of programs, like, especially if you're introducing something new that's not really like grown in that area, are people taught how to gather and save the seed? Because just thinking for myself, if I plant carrots, I would buy carrot seed at the hardware store or whatever, and then next year I would buy I have no idea how one saves carrot seed, or something.
That's something we often ask with our partners. What's the long-term plan? Is there a plan to work with the group to have a savings account and then use that to buy seed next year? Or are you training them on seed, harvest, storage, all that kind of stuff, post-harvest storage thing? I think people are thinking about it more. Sometimes the vegetable seed are challenging to save.
But that comes in two ways. If you look at these briefs, it's when you choose the vegetable, can you save the seed or not? So when the implementer recommends it, understand the implications. There are a set of manuals out on saving vegetable seed, and they're produced by the World Vegetable Center. The problem is that they're not Africanized. That they're mostly Asian. The Asian group is so much more advanced than we are in that. But there are some manuals how to help farmers save seed if that's where you want to go.
We have some programs that are exploring local seeds, like everyone's talking about amaranth, but no one's really planting amaranth. Right. Looking at what are the seeds that people can even harvest around them that they can plant in their gardens.
Right. That's something that we've been encouraging. I mean, why not use things that are nutritionally beneficial but locally available? And I think there's also more market receptivity to stuff like that. The initial challenge was determining quality. So if you got your okra seed from your friend, but I think that I mentioned earlier, we've now figured out ways to ensure that there's quality. It may not be certified, but it's fine quality. And I think that opens the door to a wider array of crops and activities. Good? Okay. I'm conscious of the time, so I will end with best case scenario. I mean, ideally, in an acute response, we will still be working towards all these ultimate end goals. And if not acute, then at least in the chronic phase. We're looking to increase income, improve nutrition, and support resilience. And I chose these two pictures. The first one, I don't remember where that was. I think that was Mali. They did a garden project, which is all well and good, but people still have this long, lean season, right? So they had worked with the women's group to dry the okra and tomatoes, store it, and then sell it in the local markets, and also keep it for a lean season food, which I think is fantastic. This guy is demonstrating how he waters his crops. So thinking about things like keyhole gardens, where you minimize the resources used and try and deal with harsh environments, maximizing the water that you have and improving upon techniques which might not be very targeted. So that's it for me. Any questions? Yeah.
So how do you incorporate, so you talked about nutrition, but you did talk about excellent social behavior change communication. but if they don't have the proper health, they can't even digest or absorb the nutrients. So how do you address that in some of these off-the programs?
I think the rest of our team can speak to this too, but a lot of our programs are multi-sectoral, so it won't be a standalone vegetable seed activity. But I mean, we have feeding centers or health centers that have a garden out front and an education activity for kids when they come visit. I think there's a broad understanding that the activities have to be integrated for maximum impact at this point. Standalone seed, I don't think gets us where we need to go. And I say we, but I mean, this is our implementing partners. You guys are doing the hard work.